Hi guys, in this video I'll discuss an important literary term, that is dramatic monologue. Dramatic monologue is used in poetry. So though it is found in Old English poems and ballads, but dramatic monologue is chiefly associated with Victorian poets, especially Robert Browning, who is known to have perfected the genre. Many poems of Lord Tennyson, Browning, D.G. Rossetti are written in dramatic monologue. These are Victorian poets. Now, the common definition of dramatic monologue is a poem in the form of a speech by a speaker who inadvertently reveals aspects of his or her character while addressing a particular situation in a dramatic way to a silent listener. Now, if you look at this definition, so there are some key elements of this definition. That is, there will be a speaker who is meant not to be a poet, an implied auditor or listener who is silent, and a particularized situation or setting. Now, unlike the soliloquy, what the soliloquy is, the speaker directly speaks to himself or herself alone or in a particular setting. But in dramatic monologue, the speaker addresses to an audience who is silent. Okay. Now, this can also be confused with the confessional poetry, in which feelings, thoughts and experiences of the poet are revealed. But here in dramatic monologue, it's not about the poet, but the character that the poet is writing about. Now, confessional poetry that we find in American literature in postmodern era during 1950s, 1960s, the poetry of Sylvia Plath, Robert Lowell. Okay, now in confessional poetry, the poet reveals about his problem or her problem, like depression, any domestic problem. Okay, it's about poet, not the character. In dramatic monologue, the poet writes about the character. Okay. So, dramatic monologue can be seen as an art of characterization, as the characteristics of the speaker indirectly get revealed through his or her narration. Okay. Now, apart from the common definition of dramatic monologue, there is a hotly debated definition of dramatic monologue by Robert Langbaum. He argues in his work, The Poetry of Experience, that the form is the tension created between the reader's sympathy for and judgment of the speaker, similar to that of romantic poetry of experience, in which reader's job is to achieve that sympathy. And by this he means to say that for a poem to be considered as dramatic monologue, there must be a split between our sympathy and judgment, but his readings tend to favor sympathy, mentioning judgment as an afterthought. So here he wants to say that in order to become a dramatic monologue, there must be an element of sympathy. So as a reader, we must sympathize with the character, the speaker, first, and then we'll judge that particular character. Okay. But there is a problem. Like if you read the My Last Duchess of Robert Browning, here I will discuss three important dramatic monologue, two of Browning, that are My Last Duchess and Porphyra's Love, and also one by Lord Tennyson, that is Ulysses. Now in My Last Duchess, Langbaum writes that what interests us more than the Duke's wickedness is his immense attractiveness, his power and freedom, and his hardcore of character fiercely loyal to itself. Now if you read this My Last Duchess, so here the Duke of Ferrari first describes a portrait of his late wife, who is dead now, to an emissary of Count. Now first he describes how the portrait is beautiful, how his wife used to smile, the kind of charms she had. But towards the end of this poet, he reveals that it is him who gave the order to put an end to her smile forever. Because the reason why he killed or why he gave the order was that his wife's charming glance was not solely reserved for him. So she was easily get impressed by others, he used to talk to others. Okay. And this was something he didn't like, and even he also mentioned that it was something that he didn't even want to say to her that he didn't like. So instead of that, instead of saying to her, he directly gave the order to put an end to her smile forever. Okay. So the kind of arrogant person, the kind of misogynistic person, how ruthless the king is, the poetry reveals at the end. Okay. As a woman, as a feminist reader, so it will be problematic for a woman who is reading this poem. The poem actually forces us to suspend judgment of the Duke for the sake of understanding. It gives rise to some amount of disagreement to many readers, especially women, whose questioning of patriarchy might preclude any possibility of sympathizing with the Duke. So as a sensible reader, everybody will be disturbed by this kind of behavior of this Duke, how kind of arrogant person he is. Okay. But this definition could be fit into the Ulysses poem. So the Ulysses poem is basically the character Ulysses, actually the Odysseus, who fought in the battle of Troy. Okay. Now while he was returning home through voyages, okay, he was very scornful at the thought that he would have to again sit at home, rule his home country Ithaca, just sitting confined to his home country. So it was not something that was his cup of tea. So he had a strong urge to set out for new voyages, to discover new lands, to encounter with people, to know new more things. So he also says that he disgusted at the thought that the people of his home country, they just procure well, they eat and sleep, and apart from that they do nothing. Okay, he again and again mentions that he wants to once last more time to set sail again for new voyages. Okay, this kind of urge he had. So this is what he recounts while he was returning home. Okay, so Tennyson's Ulysses may fit into his theory, the Longbaum's theory, but readers do not always feel sympathize with the speakers in some Browning's monologue. So Browning's monologue of My Last Duchess, if you read even Porphyra's Love, in Porphyra's Loves, the character, the lover, how kind of psychopathic lover he is, because just he thinks that he fears that his beloved might not be the same the next day as they are right now in a silent night. In order to immortalize their love, he just killed her. Okay, even he mentioned that he killed her, she even didn't feel any pain. So kind of psychopathic killer that the poet reveals. Okay, now there are some key characteristics of dramatic monologue. First is, in most of the dramatic monologue, the speaker never changes his or her mind, or the situation does not resolve in the end. So if you read the My Last Duchess, so My Last Duchess, the Duke remains arrogant and egregious minded. So he thinks that whatever he has done right. Okay, so he never regrets about the, even he becomes more cheerful that he has done something right. Okay, in Porphyra's Lover, the Porphyra's lover continues to self-justify himself. Okay, that he thinks that whatever he has done, he did right. So instead he has done something in which his beloved didn't feel any pain while dying. Okay, in Ulysses, the character Ulysses, he remains hell-bent on setting out for adventure again. Ulysses mentions again and again that whenever he will get time, whenever he will get opportunity, he wants to again set out on new journey. Now, in dramatic monologue, the second characteristic is everything is limited what the speaker sees, thinks and chooses to tell us. So only the narration of the speaker acts as a window to see the facts and issues raised in the poem, and only by making use of that can we draw a conclusion. Okay, so there is this only window of this character. Through this we can know, or we can judge what kind of situation is, what kind of characteristics of this person has. Okay, so nothing beyond that we could do. There is this limitation. This narrator could be unreliable narrator. He might have some problem like the Porphyra's Lover, so he is kind of psychopathic, or even the My Last Duchess, so they are not kind of sensible person, so they think that whatever they have done, they are right, but it actually isn't. And the third important characteristic is the form of dramatic monologue worked as a tool for the Victorian poets to expose unflinchingly the social issues such as domestic violence and hypocrisy of several characters living in the society. Terrific monologue like Porphyra's Lover. So Browning affected the reader's attitude and the notion pertaining to morality and sexuality during the Victorian period. So through this particular dramatic monologue, so a poet can characterize a person of that particular era. Okay, through this particular character we can understand, or the poet can sketch people's character of that particular epoch. Okay, or the kind of notion people have regarding morality, sexuality or women. Okay, these things get revealed. This is how dramatic monologue works. Dramatic monologue works as a tool for a poet to sketch any character of that particular era. So I hope you have got a hang of it. If you have any question, you can let me know in the comment section below. Thank you.